Okay, I'm just checking if we're at quorum yet.
We have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. And we have a quorum. We'll start with item number 2, approval of May 2024 meeting summary. Are there any comments or questions? Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
This is Bob Day, move to approve.
Ed Collins, second.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob and Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Awesome. Minutes pass. So move to the information section and start with item number 3, discussion on FY 26 to 29 project call and funding opportunity. And Ryan, pass it over to you.
Thank you. So this is Ryan Collins, CAMPO staff and short range planning manager. Wanted to talk about the upcoming project call that we're about to issue. So we are targeting September 9th to release the TASA and CRP notice of funding opportunity on project call. If anybody's new, I think most people are probably familiar with what these programs are, but just a reminder that the Transportation Alternative Set-Aside Funding, this is a set-aside out of our SDBG funding that's specifically for non-motorized non-motorized vehicle transportation projects, including pedestrian and bicycle facilities, recreational trails, safe routes to school, as well as certain community improvements and environmental mitigation related to stormwater and habitat connectivity. We also have the carbon reduction program. This is the new formula program that we've had a lot of discussion about. And we receive essentially the same amount of funding for TASA, and I'll get into that in the next slide. But these are for projects that directly reduce transportation emissions. This includes TDM programs, a lot of different ITS infrastructure that helps make the system run more efficiently. Transit is also a viable eligible activity, as well as other non-vehicle infrastructure. So here's the financial funding forecast that we're using to base the project call off of. So currently, from today's fiscal year 2024, we have in carbon reduction funding, we have about $1.9 million available. And then we also have about $9 million in TASA funding currently available. So the project call, we're going to run that through, I'll go through the schedule in the next section, but it's going to program projects for fiscal years 26 through 29. And so for the carbon reduction program, we have a total of close to $32 million available to program in those 4 fiscal years. And then likewise, the TASA funding, we have close to $37 million with which to program. So I want to go through the schedule. So we are tentatively looking to release the call for projects on September 9th. We're going to do a webinar a week after we release the notice of funding opportunity. We're going to go through the project call information. We've updated the information packet with some additional information and resources. This is based off the packet. If you were here in 2017, we basically updated that packet with additional information, even though the project selection criteria will remain the same. We'll also go through an application tutorial. We have a new application process that I'll talk about in just a minute. And yeah, so the process is essentially, we're looking to, once we release it, to kind of wrap it up before the end of the year with a current due date of December 13th, 2024. At that point, we'll spend basically all of spring evaluating the projects. And then we'll bring it back to the technical advisory committee once we've wrapped up the recommendation. We'll do, the rounds of information. This schedule is a little, it is correct, excuse me. We are going to request recommendation from the technical advisory committee on May 26th, and then take it to the policy board at the June policy board meeting. So a couple of new things we're going to be doing for the project call administration. As I mentioned, we're going to be doing a couple of webinars. And that'll be an opportunity for everybody, we'll go through the entire process. We're going to make those presentations available and post those online. We're also going to be doing a couple of things related to staff availability during the project call. We're going to be doing open office hours on a regular basis throughout the project call process, where essentially me and other staff as needed will sit on the call, and people can call in with any questions they may have. Again, we're going to have a project call webpage under the funding opportunities website webpage on the CAMPO website. This will have everything, all the information and resources, and we're going to be updating that regularly. We're also creating a email specifically for the project call, so the staff can be responsive through that. We're going to be handling all support through this funding email. And we'll then use that to post to a frequently asked questions table that we'll update on a weekly basis. That way, we know that staff has time to be responsive to the questions, but that everybody also has the benefit of the answers to those questions, so that they're posted publicly, and so y'all can reference that throughout the project call process. And so, yeah. And then finally, a couple more slides. We do have a brand new funding application that we'll do a deep dive into this, but this is run through our My Project software. It's an online accessible form. It's going to have, you can embed attachments within it. It's going to have interactive fields, as well as save and resume capabilities. So you can start your application, save it, and come back to it later, because these applications are, very comprehensive. But this gives you an opportunity to work on it over time. It's going to be much simpler than the interactive PDFs that we had in the 2017 project call. Yeah. So, and finally, just wanted to talk about the SCBG funding call. So there was some discussion about including SCBG funding as part of this opportunity, because we do have a little bit of funding available in 2028 and 29. So there were some overlapping fiscal years, but after discussing this with Chair Long and internally, we are going to do this current project call is going to last a year, and then we're going to do an SCBG funding opportunity basically this time next year. We're going to be kicking that off. Essentially, when we wrap this one up, we're going to go into the SCBG funding call. And that'll be currently is projected around $174 million. So just wanted to point that out. I think if you are planning to apply for the SCBG funding next year, when we do that project call, it would be of your interest to attend all of the webinars and everything we're doing for this project call, because a lot of the process will be the same, especially when it comes to readiness. And I think given how complex some of these projects can be, it's probably a good opportunity now to start working on those projects in preparation for that project call, which is why I'm bringing it up now. But yeah, so that's just a quick review of the project call process, and we're going to get that kicked off as soon as we can. So any questions?
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. Anybody have any questions or comments? No, looks like we're good.
Well,
Thank you for that.
I'm sorry. Yep. This is
Go
Ed
ahead,
Collins. I do have a question. Ryan, could you go over the products through the congestion reduction program that have been funded thus far? Because this is a relatively new.
Yeah, we had three. You said the carbon reduction funding program. Yeah, so we have three projects. We have our transportation demand management program that was allocated $4 million. We're still waiting on approval from FHWA on that, but that should be imminent. And then we have $1 million put on the carbon reduction plan, which I was going to announce later, but I'll just bring it up now that we kicked that project off about a month ago. So we're getting that started now. Obviously we were supposed to be a little bit further along on that process, but because of the delay in getting the approvals, but we're going with that. And then the last project and the most carbon reduction funding was put on the ITS project at the Oak Hill Y. So a lot of the ITS infrastructure that's being included in the Y at Oak Hill was funded with carbon reduction funding.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, just as an observation, that the ITS type of projects run about what I've seen close to the allocation amount that we receive each year. So, hopefully there's some consideration that there's a lot of other needs throughout the region that maybe have a lower dollar cost, but could have similar type of impacts than just working on one short corridor at a time for ITS. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ed. Bob, you had a comment or question? See your hand up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. keep tapping the wrong button here. Just to confirm on the STBG, it says 28 to 31. So that's all of the funds have been allocated up to 28. Is that a correct understanding?
Yeah, we've we're allocated all the way fully through 27, and then we have a little bit of funding that's allocated in 2028 as well.
Okay.
So
No.
yeah, that funding on 28 and 31 would be the remainder of 28 all the way through 31.
And refresh my memory, do these projects require federal environmental clearance, or is local
Yes.
environmental clearance satisfactory?
I believe, yeah, I don't know.
So Bob, are you talking about the STBG or are you talking about the TASA and CRP?
The STBG,
Oh, I'm sorry. I think it requires federal clearance.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we'll double check that, Bob.
and I think that'd be helpful on all of the different program requests, if we could just denote that, what the environmental clearance requirement is.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
No, that's definitely something that, we'll go through that in the webinar as well, both in this call and TAS and CRP, most of those are capital exclusions, but the larger projects that are typically funded with SCBG obviously have a risk of being a much larger environmental process. And so we make sure that's built into the schedule. So.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks,
I
Bob.
don't think I saw you right now. Oh, sorry.
You're good. Charlie?
Yes, Ryan, in TASA, is there a portion of funding going towards active transportation plans? Have y'all put a
Yeah, so we are going to have studies as part of the project call. So you can request those.
Are those broken out by a percentage of the funding, or is it just going to be measured against?
No, it's just going to be based on the need that's presented in the the documents or the plan proposals that are submitted. So they'll be evaluated and recommended based on like the other projects.
Okay, and then projects that got submitted for the 2050 plan are going to, for active transportation, got a score. Is that not going to be used as a part of the TASA call? It's going to be a separate application, because I thought that that's why if you're looking for federal funds, you put it in, you did an application, full blown application. That score would be used in the project call. Is that not the case?
Can you ask that again? Sorry.
Okay, so in the 2050 plan, if you were submitting a project in the 2050 plan, and you were asking for federal funding, you did the full-blown application for the 2050 plan, and you're going to get a score. I thought that score was going to be used in project determinations. Maybe I'm totally missed it. No? Okay.
Yeah, no, that's just for the constrained list. But this there's different criteria for the project call. For the funding call.
So this is, so you've got different criteria. Okay. I guess I missed it.
Because Charlie, you're gonna because you're applying for a TIP project, you ought to be in a much different stage than that for the plan application. So you'll have a lot more detail for the TIP one, and that one we're actually the board is actually allocating funding on the TIP one, unlike the plan one. So the criteria is different.
Yeah.
I will point out there's a lot of overlap. So if you've done some of the work for 2050, you could probably pull all of that into your application, because a lot of it's looking at the same stuff.
That's good to hear. I just for some reason thought that was the beauty of this application process, was you're going to get a score and you were ready for the the next project call. But that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of an evolution. I think that the bigger lift in the project call funding is going to be the readiness more than anything else. So.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, Ryan, one of the criteria that will be scored for the TIP is inclusion in the RTP. So if you have gone through the process of getting your project into the RTP, it'll score higher than a project that has not been put into the RTP.
Okay.
So
All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Charlie. Tom, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, hey, thanks. So since this is a call that will be announced probably September, so this time next year, and it'll take a good year or so to go through the review and award. Is there generally an understanding that there's going to be still 2 years of a gap between when a project might be eligible for or to be awarded before funding even becomes available? Did I miss that, or did you already talk about that? Sorry.
So, we were actually just talking about that same issue, Tom, this morning on something different. So if I'm understanding what the question is, you're saying between the time the board awards funding and the time, just sort of a rough time to get the AFA approved and get it agreements and everything else in place, it may be another year and a half, 2 years. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, just whoops, sorry about that. Yes.
And I'll point
So
out
if I-
that, this schedule here,
Let's let him finish. Go ahead, Tom.
No, you nailed it. So there's going to be a good 2-year gap or so before any funding becomes available. So if somebody applies, they realistically might not be getting the funding till 29, 30, or 31, right? So
that's what I was
it could be-
gonna.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just got a break. I couldn't tell. But, so when this project call will be awarding or making the recommendation to the policy board in calendar year of May 2027, and then fiscal year 2028 starts in October. And we have money available in fiscal year 2028. So there's realistically the award happens in May. In that October, that funding will actually be in our account, ready to be obligated to a project if it's ready to go and has the AFA in place. So there's not a gap there. The funding's there at that point. So it's not the first available funding is not in fiscal year 29 or 30, it's in 28.
Okay, yeah, understood. Thanks.
That makes sense.
So, Tom, I also was in a meeting with TxDOT Thursday, and the issue of AFA approval time came up. And internally, they are looking at that again. I'm optimistic at this time that we will see improvements, not only in the process, but in the amount of time it takes to get an AFA approved. And some of this has been sort of tested out in Dallas and Fort Worth districts in the past few months and produced pretty good results. So I'm hopeful that we will see that AFA approval time drop.
Thanks, Ashby. Bob, did you have another question? I still see your hand up, making sure that was from before.
No, I'm sorry.
Any other comments or questions on this item? Okay, awesome. We'll move to item 4, presentation on the CAMPO Regional Safety Action Plan. Nick, I think you and Brian are taking this one.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Nick Samuel, Senior Regional Planner with CAMPO. Before I hand it off to Brian, I just wanted to thank everybody. A lot of you on the call were part of the county task force meetings that we had. So I wanted to thank you all for your participation. I'm going to be managing the project from the CAMPO side of things. We have a great team that we put together to help the regional and the county specific plans. So I wanted to introduce Brian Chandler from DKS Associates. He's going to be leading this discussion today. Brian, I have control of the presentation, so whatever you want me to advance, just let me know.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're ready to roll. So I'm a little bit of shadow today with my camera. Is my audio coming across okay? Okay, fantastic.
It is.
All right, thank you, Nick, and greetings, everyone. Yeah, this will be a kind of general update on our current status on the CAMPO's Regional Safety Action Plan. My name is Brian Chandler. I'm at DKS Associates. I'm serving as the safety lead for this project. Renee Hurtado at DKS is our consultant project manager for the overall project. Just to give an update for those of you who may not be familiar, or as a reminder to all of us, that CAMPO received $2.3 million from USDOT several months ago to conduct or develop a roadway safety plan at the regional level through USDOT's Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. We call it SS4A, so you'll probably hear me say that during this presentation. It's including 2 different pieces. There's a CAMPO-wide regional plan and then also individual chapters for each of the member counties. That does exclude Travis County. They did their own SS4A grant process concurrently, and they're working on their plan now. We do, just by the way, have a liaison that's connecting to, and we are staying in touch with the Travis County team as well. This plan will allow both CAMPO and the local agencies to apply for implementation funding through SS4A. This program at USDOT has several different types of funding. The one that you've already applied for and received funding for is developing the safety action plan, and then several other types, including some supplemental planning, demonstration or pilot projects, and then also implementation funding as well. Next slide. So as mentioned, we're looking at regional safety plan, and then under this particular piece of work or this contract, 5 different county level plans. These are, by the way, aren't just literally for the county jurisdictions. They do include the cities, transit agencies, other partners within those counties as well. Next slide. Just a little bit of a quick look at who's actually working on this on the consulting side. You can see CDMP is doing public outreach, both for this effort and then aligned with the RTP work that Will is leading. As mentioned, we're leading the Regional Safety Action Plan, the overall contract. We also I'll be the lead author for the Regional Safety Action Plan itself. And then we've distributed the different task force leadership to different sub-consulting firms who are working for us, for CAMPO. So we're leading Williamson County, Cambridge Systematics is leading Hayes County, BGE is leading Bastrop County, Aaron Pierce is leading Burnett County, and SV Traffic is leading Caldwell County. Next slide. So what we're asking of you all as part of this process is attending these meetings. So today is part of that. Providing feedback on draft results that you see from us at the regional plan level. We'll talk a little bit today about some draft goals and objectives. We'll be later bringing to you some data analysis related to safety, also project and policy lists. And then asking you to share the outcomes of this or share this effort with your communities. There is a pretty extensive public outreach effort as part of this too that I'll mention in a upcoming slide. Next. Some of the items within the project scope, one is, I'll just kind of share them with you, reading through and understanding existing plans and policies. There's a requirement under SS4A to assess existing plans and policies. In this case, at the regional level, county level, municipal level, to identify potential missing policies, plans, procedures related to safety, but also opportunities to improve those plans, policies, procedures for safety. So we'll be providing some policy related recommendations as part of that review. Next is looking at safety goals and objectives and developing those. That's everything from a high level vision down to lower level objectives. We'll talk about those in a couple minutes. Also, roadway safety analysis using the available data. So this is primarily focused on crash history data to identify what we call a high injury network, which is not too dissimilar from a heat map. We're just getting started in that process right now. Also looking at some other data that we know is related to safety. That can be roadway inventory data, equity, traffic volumes, posted speed limit, operating speeds. These are all pieces of data that we can also use to be proactive and predictive to identify potential future safety needs. So some other things we'll be doing then with all this information is identifying projects and strategies, also prioritizing those. This does include, but go beyond just infrastructure projects. So we very much will be identifying infrastructure projects in each of the 5 counties and then regionally as well. But we'll also be looking at the potential for education, enforcement, other types of efforts, even looking at things like traffic safety culture and equity issues related to traffic safety. I mentioned that with the equity analysis, and then also, as mentioned, public outreach. And then just a reminder, this will be a regional safety action plan, kind of an umbrella plan that will have county level chapters within. Next slide. The overall process we're going through and really the Safe Streets for All approach and comes from what's called the National National Roadway Safety Strategy from a couple years ago. This came out of the U.S. Department of Transportation, the Secretary of Transportation's office. And the state system approach focuses on a couple things. Around the outside of this graphic are several principles, starting with the concept and the declaration that death and serious injuries are unacceptable. So if we all, regardless of the hows and whys and the details and all the rest, if we can agree that we can declare that this is true, that we believe that in the work that we do on a daily basis, it is unacceptable for people to die or be seriously injured in traffic crashes, then that then allows us to kind of flow through the rest of this. So around the outside, you've got several other principles that allow and kind of guide the efforts that we're doing. And then on the inside, we have what we call the safe system approach elements. And these, if anybody's been in safety planning for a long time, you've maybe heard like the 4 E's of education, enforcement, engineering, and EMS. This has some similarities to that. One thing that we're trying to do a little bit different with this framework is to think about these in a more integrated fashion. So even though they're kind of shown as like pie pieces on this in this graphic, rather than what sometimes became a little siloed with the 4 or 5 E's, is now we're trying to think about this as how do all these areas interrelate, and how, if we're going to be doing work to try to make the road safer, how are we also thinking about speeds, vehicles, people, and post-crash care. Next slide. So the way we're doing this is with our project tasks. I mentioned kind of the high-level version of what those are. We started with our project kickoff meeting this spring. We've been going through this summer goals and objectives at the regional level. We're getting started with that at the county level as well. We also have held our initial task force meetings with the different county level task forces. As we get into the fall, we've started or really done a lot of the data collection and are starting the analysis quite literally this week. And then we'll be doing some public engagement, policy recommendations later this year. And then as we turn to the calendar year, be identifying projects and strategies and going through another round of public engagement, identifying those, getting these county level safety action plans completed first. This idea, the way we decided to do it is a bottom up or kind of a grassroots effort, is we are going at the county level first, looking at those individual needs in those county level plans. And then we'll be flowing that up into development of the regional safety action plan next spring and summer. Next slide. Yeah, as mentioned, these county level task forces are composed of agency staff. CAMPO folks have attended. I attended the first in-person meetings in Williamson and Caldwell County. You can see on the left side of your screen there, we held the first meetings in late July. And during those meetings, we talked with the different county level teams and about some of their desired outcomes of this plan. How can this plan best serve them? What are some high priority safety objectives? Talked a little bit about vision and goals, and then also some public engagement opportunities that aren't just we're showing up and doing 3 open houses, but thinking about pop-up opportunities. A big value that we have in public engagement is meeting people where they are. So what are the events happening around the region that we also can table at or show up at and participate in those events as well. Next slide. There it is, the public engagement piece, getting meaningful input. One thing that we're doing, at least in my experience, I've been doing safety planning work for more than 20 years, is really thinking about this input from the public as part of our data set, like bringing this in and really truly not just lip service, but having it inform the plan. So that's an important part of this too, is getting good information from the public, understanding what their feelings are, what their needs are, and putting that into the process to help us prioritize projects. Also focusing on equity in lots of different ways. One specific example is producing materials in both English and Spanish, but also using the demographic data that we have to target areas of marginalized and underserved communities. Also being sure that we're leveraging an inclusive set of in-person and virtual online participation methods. So we're not only requiring people to show up in a room somewhere, but there's going to be ways for people to also participate at their homes via computer. And then as mentioned, we've got these 3 primary rounds of engagement. fall or October is kind of where we're targeting right now. In that kind of winter, spring, and then again next summer. Next slide. This round one of public engagement this fall is emphasizing a few different things. One is just educating and informing them on the road safety action plan. Like, what does a regional safety action plan look like? What are the fundamentals? What are the background? Like, why does this even matter? One thing different about this plan, but similar to some of your other planning processes, oftentimes the public is going to things, whether it's from TxDOT or cities and counties, that are literally a corridor in front of their house, right? Or on their way to work. And so that's a different kind of public engagement than what we're talking about here. Maybe something you all have done more at CAMPO and some of in your member agencies. But it is new for some of my clients to be doing a lot of public engagement for something that isn't just right in front of people's homes. And so it's an interesting new process, or it is for some of us. So introducing these vision goals, how we're developing this plan, sharing some preliminary data and analysis. We'll be doing that in this first round. Communicating ways that they can participate further, and then collecting input from them. Again, really thinking for real. I'm lingering on this because it's really important for those of us, especially who are traffic engineers, maybe by trade, is using the public's input as data, not just as an annoyance that we have to like process through. Next slide. Okay, we're also bringing to CAMPO and then to some of these events, this draft initial vision and goal. So let me just gonna read these to you. The draft vision, and let me try to underscore and put things in capital letters, is very much as a draft, very much open to your input today and after today. But these will be on the front page and the executive summary, and probably first slide we ever do of this presentation from here on. We'll start with the vision and goal of the Regional Safety Action Plan. And so as stated right now, this draft vision is that the streets and roads in the CAMPO region are safe, accessible, and well connected for all road users of all abilities, pedestrians, cyclists, transit users, and drivers. And then the draft goal is to reduce roadway fatalities and serious injuries by half by 2035 and to zero by 2050. That goal, the quantified goal, is consistent with TxDOT Road to Zero. Also, that 2050 date, of course, as you all know, consistent with the current or the RTP that's being drafted for 2050. Next slide. And just some draft objectives. So we've got this vision, which is kind of what we believe to be this vision for the future, right? This everybody arrives safe. We've got the goal, which is the literal numbers of cutting fatality, serious injuries in half, and then getting or approaching zero. And then how do we get there starts to get into some objectives. And that's where we can start to look at specific crash types. Like you can see the first couple, roadway and lane departure crashes, looking at reducing pedestrian and bicycle crashes. These are objectives that, if met, would then lead us to meeting our goal. And then there's also some things that can help improve in some different ways. So improving emergency response time doesn't in and of itself reduce crashes necessarily, but it does reduce the severity of those crashes because people getting cared immediately at the scene and then getting to a level 1 or level 2 trauma center or a hospital emergency room as soon as possible does make a big difference on the eventual outcome of those injuries. And then looking at other things too, secondary crashes, crashes at intersections, and then there's others we're looking at as well. And then we'll also be looking at some of these regional objectives with the county level plans. And in those cases, they may diverge from each other a little bit. We may have some where there might be a stronger objective towards pedestrian and bicycle safety based on the needs and the current data we see in those regions, and then some other regions that may focus on some other things, maybe like roadway departure or lane departure, maybe a more emphasized objective in some counties versus others. Next slide. So kind of the next steps we're headed to is looking for any feedback from you all. Again, we can do that now on the public engagement efforts, the goal setting effort we've done so far. Then our project team, we're jumping into data collection and analysis, as mentioned, preparing for round 1 of public engagement. gotta literally have a meeting tomorrow on that topic. And yeah, moving forward with all the other steps of the project that I mentioned before. Next slide. Yeah, and with any questions that you have now or really throughout this whole project, again, this goes for another year through the end of next August. So please reach out to Nick directly if you have any questions, and then he can reach out to us. Yeah, with that, be more than happy to take any of your questions. I know Nick and Will have been very directly involved as well, so they can help answer those too.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. Anybody have any comments or questions? Ed?
Yeah, I made this comment at the Travis County meeting, but one thing is that cataloging and learning from safety is not an issue that's just come up with with this. We've been trying to figure out how to do safety and make it better for decades. But would be good to go back and find out what some of the more successful programs and projects that were done in the region, but also what the ones that failed, also to learn from those, so we don't go back and make the same mistakes. So I'd encourage to talk to some of those people who have a little bit of history that can go back in and kind of share their experiences, because it is something that we talk a pretty good game, but our accident rates aren't improving as quickly as we'd like them to. And there's some history and experience that others can share that might help us going forward. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good note.
Awesome. Thanks, Ed. Charlie?
Right. I just wanted to make a comment on one of the slides. I think when you're showing what the CAMPO regional plan and the 5 county plans that you have there, I think you need to put the Travis County plan in that same line, and then just maybe make a note saying funded, under another grant, because it looks like we're basically left out of the regional plan and on our own on doing it the other way. And we know we've been coordinating with CAMPO staff and that the Travis County plan, and that's why we have the consultant that's on your side working with our consultant to make sure that our plan is incorporated into the regional plan. If you go back to that graphic, it looks like, okay, Travis County's out doing its own thing. So
yeah, that's a good note, Charlie. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think you're right. I think we could just add it in there in a different color or something and be a little more clear.
Or just on the same line, but then just with an asterisk saying funding under separate grant.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. I think in fact, we even have that note, I think, at the bottom of that slide. So yeah, I think that's good. Nick, I would definitely support us next time we present this to anybody. Yeah, updating it. Yeah, go back one more. I think it's, or maybe 2 more slides back.
It was near at the beginning.
Yeah, we could do it here too, but if you go back 1 slide, that's the one that's like the cleanest version. Yeah, so here, it makes sense to me, adding Travis County and then keeping that footnote as is. Sure, I think that makes sense. I think in an earlier version of this, we're specifically talking about this contract, and so we wanted to be a little bit careful that we weren't claiming some oversight over Travis County from the work that we're doing, but yeah, I get where you're coming from. It would feel better, I think, to have all of these together. That makes sense.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. I think, as you said, we have been coordinating, so I think that's, we're still working out some of these details, but we will make note of that and have a slightly different version of it going forward.
I think especially for an upcoming board presentation or something, at anything else that's official like this.
Thanks. Thanks for that comment, Charlie. Tom?
Thank you. Yeah, I was wondering if the goal, I saw the slide that said the plan was anticipated to be approved next August, so basically a month from now. With the Safe Streets for All program, I think the funding applications were due at the end of August, right? So would it be possible for jurisdictions to go ahead and apply for projects in anticipation of this plan being approved? Would there be that window or an overlap of time? That might be more of a CAMPO question, but.
Yeah, Tom, we we actually had a slightly different roadmap a couple weeks ago, if you would have asked us, but what we had gotten feedback from for the county task forces was to move that timeline up just a little bit for the county plans to be finished. In past years, the NOFO for the implementation grants has had a due date for those applications of late April, at the end of April. And so we are trying to meet with that deadline to allow jurisdictions to apply for that implementation grant next year. And so we at this point don't exactly know what date that will be. They've sort of moved the schedule a bit in the past couple of years for this grant program. But our goal is to have people be able to, if they do adopt it in the right timeline, be able to use that county plan as their plan, that which they use to apply for the implementation grants, or for a demonstration or a supplemental planning grant. I mean, both of them will, or could be there. But that was the intent. And then the regional plan following the county adoption later in August, as that shows here. Does that answer your question, Tom?
Yeah, sort of. I was just wondering if say Cedar Park or any jurisdiction wanted to submit an application, it is a prerequisite that there is an approved and adopted action plan prior to submittal, or can it be pending? And that was sort of the question.
Yeah, from what we understand it has to be adopted. And it can be sort of an umbrella type situation where the city of Cedar Park wants to submit their own application, but the Williamson County has already adopted that plan, then that I believe still counts. But I think that that's our intention here, is to have that timeline so that you are able to have that approved plan at that precise moment of application.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yep.
One small caveat to kind of reflect your original question, Tom, too. There is actually an August deadline too. USDOT the rules have been ever changing in the 3 years of this program so far, and the deadlines have been ever changing, including this year. They had at least 3, maybe 4 different deadlines for some of the different programs. So it gets increasingly confusing. It's taking some additional homework to kind of understand what they're trying to do each year. We expect there to be a NOFO out again, the Notice of Funding Opportunity, in February of 25. So we'll be diving into that very quickly and deeply to understand exactly what all those due dates are. And the only thing I would add to what Nick shared is that there is this little caveat of agencies can apply for supplemental planning and demonstration grant strategies, or I don't really want to call them projects. I guess it could be projects underneath an ongoing safety planning effort. So there is like a weird little caveat in there that some folks around the country have been using as well. So I just wanted to say that out loud in case you heard that somewhere else. It isn't something that we've been encouraging or working on like right now, because I think those are due tomorrow. But I have heard of that in other parts of the country, that some agencies are kind of finding ways to get in different things in different ways within this program.
So thank you. Kathy?
Yes, hi. I just wanted to mention for the Travis County folks out there that we also are looking at accelerating our schedule, and think we'll be able to do that so that our plan will be ready by the end of April for people to apply for projects as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Kathy. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Okay, now we'll move to item 5, presentation on Central Texas Transportation Management System. Narette.
All right, thank you, Chair. My name is Dira Ved. I'm the Data and Operations Manager of CAMPO. And I'm going to provide a presentation on the Central Texas Transportation Management System, or CTTMS. I press this. No, it's got a delay. Actually, I'll figure it out. I don't think it worked that time. Press it. I just click it. Oh my God. It's a high-tech presentation.
That's the slide, you're just waiting for it to shine.
Okay, I will. Here it is. There. So, there's a possibility that many of y'all on the TAC have already heard about CTTMS and the work that has been done, but this presentation is to provide that introduction to those TAC members who haven't, and the work that we've done with the agencies in the region, and to discuss potential or the next steps that are going to happen in the development of this program. And so while we wait for the next slide to appear, what I'll just outline is the concept of CTTMS. Essentially, regional agencies operate their own traffic signals, which work great most of the time, except when a traveler is traveling across borders, and then one agency will, on a routine matter or in response to a special incident or special event or traffic accident, will change their own traffic signals. Now, when that happens, especially in the near the border region, coordination amongst agencies happens either sporadic or on a non-frequent basis. Sometimes, especially when a major incident happens, somebody will only notify the affected agency or the affected neighbor only by thinking to pick up the phone and place a call saying, hey, we changed our phases, we changed the signal phasing of our traffic signals, we might want to consider doing the same thing to yours. So what CTTMS proposes to do is to take the data from the traffic signals throughout the region and use new technologies to alleviate these challenges by essentially creating a digital platform that will do the coordination on either a systematic and automatic basis. And the very first step that we had to do was to engage the agencies early, the ones that operate their own signal times. And the way you do that is by first getting everybody on the same page to read from the same playbook, which is the ISO 19650 standard. This is a data standard that really is asking for agencies to either have the same data formats, if they need to procure new data sets or ask for certain type of data. That way, when every agency has similar data platforms, then they can all talk to each other on the CTTMS platform. If we had no uniformity or no regulations and no standards, then the platform is essentially useless, which makes it pointless to even develop or run. When we engaged with the agencies, luckily every one of them said that yes, the concept of CTTMS makes sense, and also the need to adopt a similar standard is also something that we want to do. The next step was to identify a test corridor, only because when you're developing such a new product, you don't want to have a region-wide release. You want to try out on a smaller scale. You want to identify bugs or problems or issues that you didn't even anticipate, and then improve upon them. And what we wanted to do is then, for that test corridor, create a proof of concept, or what we call a minimum viable product, on that corridor to establish one functionality, identify problems, and identify solutions for scaling up for the rest of the region. These are the agencies that we met with. As you can see, we did most of our outreach in late March, and then a couple in April and May. And then in early June, we held a region-wide workshop where all those individuals who came to the individual meetings came to a workshop that we held to again discuss what the minimum viable product should be, what the functionality should and should not include. And then when we identified that MVP, that minimum viable product, we held a smaller workshop on June 7th at the CAMPO offices. So I'm going to talk about the minimum viable product on the next slide, please. So what we decided together was to look at FM 734 or Palmer Lane from 620 to 1431. And just to discuss how this outreach really worked was at first CAMPO staff proposed matching the limits of the project readiness program. So 1431 to 290 on Palmer. But then when we were talking with Cedar Park and the city of Austin, they mentioned that, you don't need to know what's going on with the signals that are 5 miles from your border. What you really need to know is what's happening with the signals, just those few signals just very close to your border. So what we did was then we narrowed the scope, narrowed the limits from to what you see here, the 9 intersections that you see on your screen. And what the minimum viable product will do is we'll collect the signal phase data from each of the signalized intersections, identify the criteria to which agencies receive the notifications, and then provide that notification to the neighboring agencies about the changes that they want to see, what changes happen. So that neighboring agency can develop filtered criteria to control which notifications that they get. And again, the agencies involved are the City of Austin, TxDOT, and Cedar Park. So our next steps, we have some key dates coming up, is by the end of this year, we hope to establish those standards and requirements. And we hope to deploy the MVP in February, at which point we hope that we can then spend the next 3 to 4 months doing development, testing, and identifying all those challenges, and then trying to seek the solution to those challenges over the next few months before we look to expand deployment. How that expansion would go is again up to discussion between us and the various agencies. And that, I believe, is my last slide. So I thank you for your time and look forward to any questions or discussion.
Awesome. Thank you, Narev. Anybody have any comments or questions? No, not seeing any. Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll go to item number 6, an update on the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. And Will, I think you're taking this one for us.
Thank you. So this presentation serves as a brief update to CAMPO's development of the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. In previous TAC updates, I've briefed you on the purpose and timeline for the plan, including some of the goals and objectives that will be used, as well as briefing you on the project call, which just wrapped up a couple weeks back. So project call applications were accepted between June 17th and August 16th. So that was 9 weeks total. We have spent a couple weeks now looking at what we received from all of the project sponsors. In total, we received 756 individual projects via the project call process. And I'm just going to provide a brief overview of what we received. Next slide, please, as well as some of the discussions we had earlier in the summer related to carryover projects from the 2045 plan. So in total, we are plan to carry over 282 projects that were in the 2045 RTP. This is based on conversations that we had with project sponsors in April and May of this year. And then through the project call process, like I said, we received 756 projects. So in total, that's a little over 1,000 projects. Now, I want to note that included in that number of 756 projects were some projects that appeared in the 2045 RTP, but in some cases, sponsors chose to apply or reapply rather than have them carried over. In this pie graph, you can see a breakdown of the projects, both carried over and received by type. And so definitely a mix of roadway, transit, and active projects, and a few ITS-TDM and other type projects. Next, I'd like to go over on the next slide, please, a diagram outlining our next steps. Where does CAMPO staff go from here now that we have all of your applications? The first thing that we are going to do is perform a check for completeness of all the applications that we received. So essentially, has all the information that we asked to be provided been provided through the application process. We'll make note of anything that might be missing, as well as we will be performing a screen for regional significance of the submitted projects and concurrence on those projects by other agencies that should be involved. And after we go through these two checks, we will be reaching back out to project sponsors to fill in any information gaps. After those gaps are filled, we will continue down this middle path shown here to scoring and scoring the projects received and comparing those scores to the self-scores submitted by the sponsors. And once that is complete, the projects that CAMPO has scored will enter into this pool of projects to be considered for the 2050 RTP constrained project list. Into this pool of projects to be considered for the constrained project list will also be any projects submitted to us as 100% locally funded, and any project that is carrying over from the 2045 RTP. All those projects already have project scores, so they can immediately enter in that pool of consideration for the constrained project list. I also want to note that any project that's currently in the 2025 to 2028 TIP will be automatically entered into the constrained project list. Next slide, please. So after we have that list for consideration, I'm just going to walk through the timeline for the remaining things we have to do before we take the plan to our board in May of 2025 for approval. So at the next TAC meeting, we will be discussing our revenue estimation methodology for the fiscal constraint exercise, as well as providing y'all an update on where we're at with project list review and scoring. So, I know a lot of y'all have already received emails from our consultant requesting a meeting to discuss transportation revenue. So if you haven't responded to those emails from Kimberly Horn, please do, so they can get a meeting on the books. The idea was that within a few weeks after some of these meetings have been hosted, we can talk a little bit more about our methodology for fiscal constraint estimation. Through September and November, we'll be conducting the first round of outreach for the 2050 RTP. And at the October TAC, we'll be reviewing the results of our revenue estimation and essentially the fiscal limit for the 2050 RTP. Then in November, we'll be taking that revenue estimation and an update on project list development to the Transportation Policy Board. Following that, we will be finalizing the draft RTP document with the constrained project list by the end of the year. And then going on to the next slide, then winter and spring of 2025 is going to be about process of getting the draft plan in front of the TAC for information, then the board for information in January and February. Following that will be a second round of public outreach that will allow folks to comment on the constrained project list. And then finally, the information items for TAC and board in March, April, recommendation by the TAC on the final plan in late April, and then approval by the board in May of 2025. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Will. Anybody have any comments or questions? Charlie, go ahead.
Yes, Will, in going back, I've looked and probably have left off a project that I needed to put in. Is there a time period where I can go ahead and submit that to you? And I can tell you it's locally funded. It's not a federal, I'm not asking for federal funding. So it's not got a score, application. It's just a locally funded project that's actually already funded, but just needs to be put in for better transparency. Is that okay is there a period of time where that can happen up to, or?
There will be a cutoff for that sort of information.
Okay.
But we can talk about that right now, Charlie. We'll set up a time to talk so we can get that integrated into your materials. But essentially, my hope is that by the time we finish having these conversations about completeness of applications, that everything is pretty much in order.
So there will be like a lock date basically set.
Yes, I haven't, I'll be coming up with that lock date following this call, because that's a very good idea to put out there.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? Comments or questions? Okay, not seeing anybody. Report on transportation planning activities. Chad?
Yep, it's John McCowan. I'll start those. So as many of you probably know, the TAC chair, Gary Hutter, has retired from the city of Round Rock. So our vice chair, Emily Barone, has become chair of the committee for the remainder of this year's meetings. Spoken with Emily, and she said she should be able to lead all the meetings for the rest of the year. So we'll just wait until our usual officer elections at the start of next year to fill vice chair position. And we just wanted to say thanks again to Gary. He was vice chair and the chair for the past 3 years. And thank you, Emily, as well, for stepping out for the TAC chair for the remainder of this year.
Yep.
Announcements, Nick?
Yeah, so I just wanted to circle back to the item I presented last meeting about the bicycle pedestrian facilities inventory update. Just thank you, everybody who sent in comments, and thank you for helping us make that a better map viewer. The updated version of that is on the 2045 RATP Regional Active Transportation page, so you can find it there. And have fun. Thank you.
Why don't you mention it for a
Oh, yeah, just want to mention again that we have kicked off the mobile emission reduction plan. So right now we're in the early stages of developing kind of the project management plan, public engagement plan, as well as the steering committee. So I'll probably be reaching out to a few of y'all, but we'll have some more updates. We're obviously in the data gathering stage, but again, that project was about a year late in getting started because of the federal approval process. But we are now officially kicked off, and we hope that'll be really kind of, we'll be wrapping that up, I guess, at the end of next year in 2025. So we'll be bringing back updates both to the TAC and the policy board as we go through that process. So I want to update everyone on that.
Yep, that's all we have.
Awesome, thanks. Ed, did you have a question?
Yes, I was thinking about how well that you have run the meeting, and I appreciate you stepping up, and maybe you'll do a second term next year.
Thanks,
I
Ed.
second that.
I appreciate that. I've sat through a few meetings in my time, so hopefully I can get us through the rest of the year. Okay. With that, we'll go to item 8, and the vice chair announcements are the next policy board meeting will be on September 9th at 2. Our next TAC meeting will be on September 23rd at 2 as well. With that, if there are no other comments or questions, I appreciate your confidence in me running these meetings for the balance of the year. And we'll see you all in September. We'll adjourn the meeting today at 3:00.